Ethan Caldwell had attended board meetings in Dubai, negotiated contracts worth tens of millions in Tokyo, and stood on world stages lecturing about innovation, resilience, and leadership. Yet on this crisp Friday evening in Manhattan, he found himself adjusting the cuff of his charcoal shirt for the seventh time, feeling a tight knot of unease forming in his stomach. At 33, he was the founder and CEO of Caldwell Dynamics, a company valued at over $600 million, a tech empire he had built from the desk of his hospital bed after the car accident that had left him paralyzed from the waist down. In the business world, he was admired, respected, sometimes even feared. But in private moments like these, waiting inside the elegant gold-lit private dining hall of the upscale restaurant Les Moreaux, preparing for a blind date arranged by someone who claimed to have the perfect woman for him, Ethan felt a vulnerability he rarely acknowledged out loud. He ran his fingers along the rim of his wheelchair's armrest, grounding himself, reminding his pulse to settle. He had faced far worse. He could face this too. His best friend and business partner, Lucas, had insisted the date would be worthwhile. "Her name is Brielle," Lucas had said. "She's beautiful, sophisticated, well-connected, and she won't care about the wheelchair. She's the kind of woman who will appreciate a man like you." Ethan had nodded, pretending to be convinced, but deep inside, he knew Lucas's real meaning. She might be willing to overlook the disability. Ethan hated when people said things like that. Even when they said it kindly, it reduced his entire identity, his brilliance, his achievements, his values, his personality, to the cold metal frame beneath him. Yet he agreed to go, partly out of curiosity, and partly because a tiny, tired part of him wanted to believe Lucas might be right. The door to the private dining room opened, and Ethan straightened as a woman stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against the marble. He recognized her immediately from the photos Lucas had shown him. Brielle Marston, a rising public relations executive known in Manhattan's elite social circles. She was stunning: sleek black dress, perfectly styled hair, flawless makeup, a diamond necklace that caught the light with every movement. Her beauty radiated the cultivated perfection of someone who lived inside high society galas and rooftop charity events. Ethan opened his mouth to greet her, but then he saw it. The way her eyes dropped to the wheelchair, froze, widened ever so slightly before her expression tightened into something painfully familiar. Judgment. Shock. A discomfort disguised behind a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan? Caldwell?" she asked, her voice thinner, higher than the confident tone she had walked in with. "That's me," Ethan said calmly, offering a warm smile. "You must be Brielle. It's great to finally meet." She hesitated, then shook his hand, the briefest possible shake, fingers barely grazing his, as if reluctant to engage fully. She sat across from him, but Ethan noticed she angled her chair slightly away, creating more distance, a small shift but one that said everything. Her eyes flicked around the restaurant as if making sure no one important was watching. The waiter arrived, giving them a brief interruption. Ethan ordered the house signature steak and roasted vegetables. Brielle asked for a garden salad with lemon dressing, her voice clipped and distracted. The moment the waiter left, the silence fell heavy. Ethan tried, as he always did, to bridge the awkwardness. He asked about her career in PR, her recent high-profile client she had worked with, her love for art and travel, anything that might spark genuine conversation. But each answer Brielle offered was short, hollow, forced. She kept glancing at her phone, checking messages that clearly weren't urgent, shifting in her seat with discomfort she wasn't even trying hard to hide. Ethan felt his initial optimism fade slowly, replaced by the familiar ache he had learned to carry with silent dignity. After nearly 15 painfully slow minutes, Brielle let out a soft, irritated sigh and leaned toward him. "Look," she said quietly, though her voice was sharp enough to slice through the air. "I'm not trying to be rude, but there must have been some misunderstanding?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but he remained composed. "What kind of misunderstanding?" She gestured vaguely toward him, not meeting his eyes. "You didn't tell me that you used a wheelchair. It changes things." Ethan inhaled slowly, keeping his expression neutral. "Well, he probably thought it wouldn't matter." "Well, it does matter," she said, her tone blunt, unfiltered now that she thought no one was listening. "I work in an image-based field. I attend corporate events, charity galas, industry parties. My partner needs to be, someone who fits that world, someone who can stand beside me, someone who, won't draw unnecessary attention. The words were like ice poured into his chest. So, you're saying, and Ethan replied quietly, that being with someone in a wheelchair would harm your image? I'm saying it's not practical, she corrected, as if practicality made prejudice acceptable. People will stare, they'll talk, they'll make assumptions. And honestly, I didn't work this hard in my career to invite complications. She looked down at her phone again, then added carelessly, no offense, but I'm not interested in being anyone's caregiver or charity project. Several heads turned from nearby tables, sensing the rising tension. Ethan felt the heat rising in his cheeks, not from anger, but from humiliation. It wasn't the first time someone had made comments like this, but hearing them spoken openly in public cut deeper than he expected. He wanted to wheel himself out of the room, out of the restaurant, far away from the pitying eyes watching them, but pride kept him rooted in place, spine straight, expression controlled. "Thank you for your honesty," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the sting. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." Brielle stood up abruptly, grabbing her purse. "I will," she said briskly. "And for what it's worth, you seem like a nice guy. I'm sure you'll find someone suitable." Then she added, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear, "Just not me. I don't have time for projects." With that, she turned sharply and walked out, her heels echoing across the polished floor, leaving Ethan alone at the table, the weight of a dozen silent stares pressing down on him. He let out a slow breath, struggling to steady the tightness in his chest. This was why he avoided dating. This was why he kept his personal life small and private. The world could accept him as a CEO, a leader, a visionary. But the moment he entered romantic territory, suddenly all people could see was the wheelchair. "Excuse me," came a soft, trembling voice beside him. Ethan turned, surprised to see a young woman standing next to his table. She wore the restaurant's uniform, a fitted black blouse, a crisp white apron tied neatly at her waist. Her dark brown hair was pulled into a low ponytail, and her eyes were full of something fierce and blazing, an emotion she was trying very hard to contain. "My name is Lena," she said, her voice firm but gentle, "and I'm sorry if I'm overstepping, but what just happened was unacceptable, completely unacceptable." Ethan blinked at her, thrown off. "Thank you," he said slowly, "but you really don't need to." "Yes," Lena interrupted, pulling out the chair Brielle had vacated and sitting down boldly. "Because no one deserves to be spoken to like that. Not here, not anywhere, and you especially didn't deserve it tonight." Ethan glanced toward the front of the restaurant, expecting her manager to appear any second. "Your supervisor will get angry if he sees you sitting here." "Let him get angry," she said boldly, lifting her chin. "Some things are more important than rules." Ethan stared at her, stunned by the fire in her voice, the protectiveness in her gaze, the sincerity of her anger on his behalf. It was something he had not felt from a stranger in a long, long time. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly. A shadow crossed her features, something vulnerable, something personal. She swallowed, then spoke quietly but firmly. "Because my father used a wheelchair for the last 12 years of his life, and I know exactly how people can treat someone in your position. I watched people talk down to him, underestimate him, ignore him, judge him. I watched him come home some nights with his heart shattered, not because of the wheelchair, but because of the way the world responded to it." Her eyes glistened slightly, but she maintained her composure. "So, when I saw that woman humiliate you like that, something inside me snapped. I couldn't just stand there and let it happen." Ethan felt a pressure build in his chest, not pain, not humiliation this time, but something gentler, warmer. Gratitude, a sense of being seen in a way he rarely was. "You're kind," he said. "I appreciate what you're trying to do." "I'm not trying," she corrected softly. "I'm doing. Because you deserve to finish your evening with dignity and with someone who treats you like a human being, not like an inconvenience." Her voice cracked slightly as she added, "And for what it's worth, Brielle didn't walk out because of you. She walked out because she doesn't know what real worth looks like." Ethan held her gaze, and for the first time that evening, he felt something break through the cold shame Brielle had planted in his chest. Hope. A spark. Small but real. In the dim glow of the restaurant chandeliers, as Lena sat there unafraid, unapologetically defending him, Ethan realized this evening might not have been a total disaster after all. In fact, It might have been the beginning of something unexpected, something life-changing, something that would challenge everything he believed about himself, about love, and about the hidden kindness that still existed in the world.
Ethan had left Layla Morrow that night, expecting to carry bitterness with him all the way home, the kind that usually settled inside his chest for days after encounters like this. But something strange happened as his car pulled away from the restaurant and Manhattan's lights streaked past the windows. He kept replaying Lena's words, the raw sincerity, the fierce honesty, the way she had sat down across from him as if his dignity mattered more than her job, more than the rules, more than the consequences she might face. He thought about her deep brown eyes blazing with protective anger, the way she had looked at him not with pity, not with hesitation, but with a firmness that felt like oxygen he didn't know he needed. It stunned him how someone he had known for 10 minutes had shattered the humiliation Brielle tried to bury him under. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan felt something he rarely felt after a failed date. He felt understood. And that feeling clung to him long after he returned to his penthouse, overlooking the shimmering night skyline. While the city slept below him, Ethan found himself staring out the massive glass windows with his phone in hand, Lena's name lingering in his thoughts. He had written it down on a napkin when she spelled it for him before returning to work, and the napkin now sat beside him like a quiet invitation. He had her number only because she had written it on his receipt. If you ever need to talk, or if you just want someone who actually listens. He wasn't the sort of man to reach out impulsively, especially after emotional nights, yet his fingers hovered over the screen. He hesitated, wondering if it was appropriate, if it was too soon, if she had written that number because she meant it or simply because she had pitied him. The last thing Ethan wanted was to be anyone's pity project. But something told him Lena wasn't the type to pity anyone. She was the type to fight for them. Across the city, Lena lay awake in her tiny apartment shared with two other waitresses who were already asleep in the other room. The quiet flicker of a street lamp cast a soft glow through her curtains as she stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment she walked up to Ethan. She couldn't shake the image of his face when Brielle humiliated him, the way he tried to keep his pride intact even while someone chipped away at it. She hated that look. She had seen it too many times on her father's face. She had been only 19 when the accident took away his mobility, and she had watched the world shrink around him, not because of his chair, but because people saw the chair before they saw the man pushing it. Lena knew that look, the look of someone who learned to swallow a wound with grace, because the world didn't know how to see past its own prejudice. She hated that someone like Ethan, so composed, so dignified, so brilliant, had been made to feel that way. So when her phone buzzed gently beside her, and she saw Ethan's name appear on the screen, she wasn't shocked. She smiled. "Hey, Lena. I hope this doesn't cross any lines, but I wanted to thank you again for tonight. You didn't have to do what you did, but it meant more than you know." She read it twice, and then typed back. "You don't need to thank me. I did what any decent human should have done. I'm just glad you left with your head held high." But Ethan replied immediately, "I didn't leave with my head high because of me. I left that way because of you." Lena felt something warm bloom in her chest. She wrote back, "Well, then I'm glad I helped." That simple exchange turned into an hour of messages, then 2, then 3. They talked about everything. Her father, her dream of running her own cafe someday, Ethan's favorite old jazz records, his habit of reading late into the night, her love for homemade desserts, his lifelong obsession with architecture. Their words flowed easily, unforced, natural. For the first time in months, Ethan fell asleep feeling lighter. And for the first time in years, Lena felt genuinely excited about a conversation that wasn't draining or one-sided. The next morning, Ethan woke earlier than usual, energized by something he couldn't explain. He navigated through his accessible kitchen with practiced ease, preparing his coffee while reading through overnight business emails. But even as he discussed expansion proposals and new project timelines with his executive team, the memory of Lena's messages lingered in his thoughts like a warm undertone. She wasn't glamorous like Brielle, not polished or cold or wrapped in the elite expectations of Manhattan's upper class. Lena was real. She was direct, sincere, courageous in ways people in Ethan's world rarely were, and he found himself wanting to know her more. Later that day, while dealing with a frustrating press request that questioned his company's upcoming project launch,
His phone vibrated. It was a message from Lena. "Did you sleep okay?" His chest loosened instantly. He didn't even realize how tense he had been until he read those 4 words. No one asked him things like that, not sincerely, not without wanting something from him. He responded, "Better than I have in a long time." She sent a simple smiling emoji, and he found himself smiling back at his screen like a man far younger, far less wounded. Hours later, when Lena arrived at her shift in Le Lamoro, her manager, Mr. Rowan, called her into the office. She braced herself for a reprimand, maybe even worse. Her heart hammered as he shut the door behind them. His stern face didn't soften. "About last night. Sitting at a customer's table is against policy. You know that." "Yes, sir," Lena replied steadily, preparing to defend herself again. "But I'll say the same thing. What happened last night wasn't normal, and I—" But the manager raised his hand to stop her. "Save the explanation. I heard everything. I spoke to a few servers who were nearby." He folded his hands. "Lena, you spoke respectfully, you handled yourself professionally, and the truth is, that woman treated our guest in a way we cannot allow here. I'm not going to punish you for standing up for someone." Lena exhaled a breath she didn't know she had been holding. "In fact, Mr. Caldwell left a note specifically asking me to tell you something if I spoke to you today," Mr. Rowan continued. Lena blinked. "What note?" He said, and I quote, "Please don't punish her. She gave me back my dignity. That's priceless." Lena felt her throat tighten. She didn't realize she had moved until she found herself sitting down slowly on the edge of a small chair, absorbing those words. Mr. Rowan continued, "You're one of the best employees here, Lena. Don't worry, you're fine." She nodded, touched in a way she didn't have words for. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan found himself entering a meeting room with a rare lightness in his expression. His executives noticed it. Even Lucas, who had known Ethan for years, gave him a curious look. "You seem different today. Everything okay?" Ethan smirked. "Better than okay." "You're glowing," Lucas teased. "Did the date go well?" "Not exactly," Ethan said dryly. Lucas winced. "That bad?" "Worse," Ethan said. "She walked out." "Damn. I'm sorry, man." "Don't be." Ethan leaned back in his chair and his lips curved slightly. "Because someone else turned the night around." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Someone else?" "A waitress," Ethan said simply. Lucas's eyes widened. "Seriously?" "Yes." "What's her name?" "Lena." Lucas let out a low whistle. "Wow, didn't see that coming. So what now?" Ethan paused, thinking about her messages, her fire, her honesty. "I want to see her again," he said quietly. "Not because she comforted me, not because she stood up for me, but because talking to you feels real. I'd like to take you out properly if you'd let me." Lena go quiet. I could almost hear her processing my words. "Ethan, I'd like that too," she finally said. "Very much." He exhaled slowly. "Sunday. Let me take you somewhere you've never been. Surprise me." "I intend to," Ethan said softly. And in that moment, neither of them understood how deeply this one simple decision would change the course of their lives. How one humiliated evening, one bold gesture, one spark of unexpected kindness would be the beginning of a story that would challenge their world, their beliefs, their fears, and their hearts in ways neither could have predicted. Because sometimes, life doesn't give you the moments you expect. It gives you the moments you need. And Ethan and Lena were about to walk straight into one.
Sunday arrived with the kind of soft golden sunlight that made New York feel gentler than usual, as if the city itself had paused long enough to breathe. Ethan woke earlier than he had in months, the nerves in his stomach fluttering in a way he had not experienced since his early 20s. He moved through his penthouse with a sense of anticipation that pulled him toward his closet, choosing a tailored navy button-down shirt and a light jacket that complemented the angle of his shoulders. He never fussed about his appearance. His disability had taught him that perfecting his clothes did not erase society's gaze, but today he found himself smoothing every wrinkle, adjusting every seam, wanting to look like the man Lena already believed he was. When he wheeled himself to the mirror, he realized something surprising. He liked the way he looked today. He looked hopeful, Meanwhile, across town in her small apartment, Lena stood before her mirror with a similar mixture of nerves and excitement fluttering in her chest. She had chosen a soft cream sweater tucked into a flowing burgundy skirt that brushed her calves, simple yet elegant in a way that made her feel confident without trying too hard. Her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, a style she rarely wore because long shifts in the restaurant demanded practicality over presentation. But today wasn't about work. Today was about something she didn't dare name yet, something fragile, something new. She dabbed a small amount of perfume on her wrists, looked at herself one final time, and whispered under her breath, "Please don't let him regret this." When she stepped outside, the crisp air brushed against her skin as she walked to the meeting spot Ethan had texted earlier. Riverside Park, near the water's edge. She expected to find him waiting in the traditional sense, maybe under a tree or near a bench, but what she didn't expect was the sight that greeted her. A small table, draped with a white cloth, set with 2 cups of artisan hot chocolate, and Ethan sitting behind it with a smile that made her entire body soften. "You did all this?" she asked, genuinely taken aback as she approached. "I wanted something peaceful," Ethan said. "Somewhere we can talk, somewhere with real air and real calm, not the noise of a restaurant or the pressure of fancy places. I thought the river might be a good start." Lena felt warmth spread through her chest. "It's beautiful." "I'm glad you think so," Ethan replied, noticing the way her eyes lit up when she looked at the river's shimmering surface. "I've always liked this spot. I used to come here a lot during my recovery. When things felt overwhelming, this place reminded me the world kept moving, even when my life felt stuck." Lena sat down across from him, letting the moment settle gently between them. They sipped their hot chocolate, the rich sweetness warming their throats as Ethan told her stories of his early days in physical therapy, how he had learned to navigate life differently, not worse, not better, but different. He told her about the nights he cried alone when the world felt unfair, the times he hid his frustration behind disciplined control, the lonely moments when people looked at him as if he were broken instead of reinvented. He had never spoken so openly, not to anyone, not even Lucas. Yet with Lena, the words came easily, as if they had been waiting for her. Lena listened with her full heart, her gaze steady and tender, absorbing every word he shared. Then she told him about her own life, the years she spent caring for her father after the accident that changed their entire family, the countless times she watched him fight to preserve his dignity in a world that didn't always grant him that space. She described how she worked 3 jobs at one point, how she learned to stretch every dollar, how she dreamed of opening her own small cafe where people from all backgrounds could sit in warmth and acceptance. Ethan listened to her with an attentiveness few people had ever shown her. His eyes didn't judge. His expression didn't shift with pity. He simply saw her, really saw her. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the river in shades of rose and gold, their conversation shifted into laughter. Ethan teased her about her unhealthy obsession with chocolate chip muffins, and Lena playfully told him his choice of classical jazz playlists made him sound like a 70-year-old trapped in a young man's body. They both discovered they hated loud nightclubs, both loved the smell of rain-washed streets, both cried at documentaries about abandoned animals, and both felt more deeply than they ever admitted to the world. Time melted around them. Eventually, Ethan glanced at the sky and said, "I'm not finished surprising you yet." Lena raised a curious brow. "Oh, there's more?" "Much more," Ethan said, smiling as he motioned toward the path behind him. "If you're up for a little adventure." She followed him as he maneuvered his chair along the riverside path. After several minutes, they arrived at a small gated entrance that led to the lower pier. Lena frowned curiously. "Ethan, this place looks like it's closed." "It is," Ethan said proudly, pulling out a card with a magnetic strip, "which is why I rented it." "You rented the whole pier?" she asked, unable to hide her shock. "It's less dramatic than it sounds," Ethan replied lightly. "The owner's a friend, but yes." When they stepped through the gate, Lena froze. String lights hung overhead, swaying softly in the breeze, casting a warm glow over the empty pier. The entire space was quiet except for the gentle lap of water against the wooden posts. At the end of the pier was a small table, set with candles protected in glass, a simple arrangement of lilies, and 2 plates covered by silver domes. Lena pressed her hand to her chest. "Ethan, this is too much." "It's not enough," he said quietly. "Not compared to what you did for me that night. You didn't have to defend me. You didn't have to sit with me. You could have walked away like everyone else. But you didn't. You stayed. And I wanted to give you something beautiful in return. Something worthy of the kind of heart you have." Her breath caught, emotion tightening her throat. "You didn't need to do this. I didn't stand up for you because I wanted anything from you." "I know," Ethan said. "That's exactly why you deserve this." They walked, or wheeled, down the pier together, and Lena couldn't remember the last time she felt so seen, so cherished, so valued for who she truly was. When they reached the table, Ethan lifted the lids on the dishes to reveal homemade pasta he had cooked earlier in the day. Lena laughed softly, barely believing someone like him had gone so far out of his way for someone like her. It wasn't the grand gesture itself, it was the intention, the thought, the sincerity behind every detail. Throughout dinner, they talked more deeply, the kind of conversation that peeled away layers without fear. Ethan found himself confessing insecurities he rarely touched, how dating often felt like a battlefield he had no armor for, how people tried to either pedestal him or pity him, how he longed for something genuine but feared it was too rare to find. Lena opened up about her struggles with working long shifts, her exhaustion, her fear of failure, her longing for a life where she wasn't constantly sacrificing her own happiness for survival. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply sat there, watching the water ripple under the glow of the lights, both lost in the gravity of what this connection could become. Then, almost without realizing it, Lena reached across the table and placed her hand gently over Ethan's. He looked up, surprised, his eyes searching hers. "No one has ever done something like this for me," she said softly. "No one has ever treated me like I matter this much." "You mattered before tonight," Ethan replied. "Tonight was just so you could see it too." The wind danced lightly around them. The lights overhead flickered like quiet stars, and in that moment, small yet monumental, something shifted between them. Something unspoken but undeniable. A bond forming not from superficial impressions or fleeting attraction, but from truth, vulnerability, kindness, and shared wounds healed by shared understanding. When they finally left the pier, walking slowly back toward the city, Lena felt as if her life had cracked open in the best way possible. And Ethan, who had spent years hiding behind controlled emotions and guarded dignity, felt something new blooming inside his chest. Something terrifying. Something beautiful. Something real. Neither of them said the words out loud yet, but they both knew it. This wasn't just a connection. This was the beginning of a love that would challenge everything. A love that would test them. A love that would change them. A love that would be worth fighting for.
The days following their magical evening at the pier unfolded with a gentle certainty neither Ethan nor Lena expected, but both found themselves naturally falling into. Their conversations grew longer and more intimate, their exchanges filled with moments of unexpected humor, soft confessions, and quiet truths. Ethan often found himself pausing during busy workdays just to reread a message from Lena, her words grounding him in a way no financial achievement ever could. Lena, too, discovered that her long, exhausting shifts no longer left her feeling as drained as before, because each night ended with Ethan's voice soft in her ear, his questions kind, his laughter warm, his essence stitching strength into the parts of her heart that had gone unnoticed for years. Their connection deepened not through grand gestures, but through the natural rhythm of two people learning each other's worlds, step by step, moment by moment. But while their growing bond felt effortless within the quiet corners of their conversations, the weight of their very different realities loomed larger with each passing day. Ethan was a man known in Manhattan's high circles, someone whose name carried value in rooms where decisions worth millions were made with a handshake. Lena lived in a world that demanded survival rather than prestige, her life shaped by double shifts, late bus rides, and years of caring for a father whose disability had taken much, but had never taken her love. And though neither spoke it aloud, both felt the looming shadow of the inevitable moment when these two worlds would clash, when the simplicity of their connection would be tested by the complexities that surrounded them. That moment arrived faster than either expected. It began when Ethan invited Lena to his penthouse again, this time not for a planned date, but simply because he missed her. He wanted her energy in his space, wanted the sincerity she carried to fill rooms that had grown too quiet, too polished, too distant. Lena accepted without hesitation, though she couldn't help feeling nervous as the elevator ascended silently through the skyscraper. When the doors opened and Ethan greeted her with a smile that melted every fear she had, she felt safe, accepted, welcomed. She walked inside, letting the warmth of his home wrap around her. But within minutes, their quiet evening was disrupted by the sudden, unannounced arrival of a guest, someone Ethan had not expected, someone who held influence he could not easily dismiss. The elevator chimed again and the door slid open to reveal Preston Caldwell, Ethan's older brother, impeccably dressed, his expression sharp with disapproval even before he fully stepped into the room. Preston wasn't cruel by nature, but his worldview had been shaped by wealth, power, and reputation, standards he guarded fiercely. He had always believed Ethan's life needed structure, control, and disciplined image management, especially after the accident that had changed their family dynamics. Preston had taken on a paternal role, uninvited and overbearing, under the guise of protecting Ethan from the world's judgment. The moment Preston's eyes landed on Lena, his entire demeanor shifted. His chin lifted slightly, his gaze cooling, his impression forming instantly and unfairly. Lena, wearing her simple floral blouse and modest jeans, suddenly felt the weight of his evaluation pressing against her chest. She straightened her posture, instinctively bracing herself. "Ethan?" Preston said slowly, his eyes never leaving Lena. "I didn't realize you had the company." Ethan moved forward, positioning himself between them in a subtle but deliberate way. "Preston, this is Lena. She's important to me." Lena offered a polite smile. "It's nice to meet you." Preston returned the smile, but it was the kind of smile that appeared only on the lips, not in the eyes. "Likewise," he said, though the word sounded strained. He scanned her outfit, her posture, her hands, her shoes, every detail cataloged and silently judged. Then he looked at Ethan. "May I speak with you privately?" Ethan knew what was coming, and every part of him instinctively tightened. If it's about work, it can wait. Preston's jaw flexed. It's not about work. Ethan glanced at Lena, offering her a reassuring look. "It's okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure it truly was. He followed Preston into his study, closing the door behind them. The instant it clicked shut, Preston's mask of politeness fell away. "What are you doing? Dating a waitress? Ethan, think about your position. Think about the optics. Think about the company." Ethan's voice stayed controlled, but his gaze hardened. "I don't choose relationships based on optics." "You should," Preston snapped. "You run a multi-million-dollar corporation. You lead hundreds of employees. Investors watch your every move. Your personal life isn't personal anymore, not when your name appears in business journals every week." "She isn't part of the business world," Ethan countered. "That doesn't make her unworthy of me." "It makes her incompatible with your life," Preston insisted. "Ethan, people will talk. They'll twist the narrative. They'll assume she wants something from you. They'll question your judgment." Ethan felt anger rising. "Lena has never asked for anything," he said sharply. "She didn't even want me spending money on her dinner last night." Preston shook his head. "This isn't about money. It's about you making emotional decisions that affect the company. You've worked too hard to throw it all away because you're lonely." That word hit Ethan like a blow to the chest. Lonely. Because in Preston's eyes, loneliness made Ethan weak, and weakness was unforgivable. "I'm not lonely," he said quietly, controlled.
I found someone who sees me, someone who treats me with respect, someone who isn't intimidated by my disability or my career. And you think that's enough? Preston asked, frustrating. Ethan, you need someone who can stand beside you in boardrooms, someone who understands the pressure of high-level decisions, someone who fits your vision of my life, not mine. Preston stiffened, his voice lowered. I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to control me, he replied, just like after the accident, just like every time you think I can't handle something because I'm in this chair. Preston's face hardened. That's not fair. It's very fair, Ethan said, his voice like steel. You want me to live a life that makes sense to you. But Lena makes sense to me. She brings out the version of myself I lost years ago, the one that you and others kept trying to bury under caution and image management. Preston stared at him, stunned by the force behind Ethan's words. But when he finally spoke, his voice was cold. Think carefully, Ethan, because choosing her means choosing a difficult path, a path you're not prepared for. Ethan's eyes narrowed. I'd rather walk a difficult path with someone real than a polished path with someone empty. Preston said nothing more. He left the room, offering a stiff nod to Lena before exiting the penthouse altogether. When Ethan returned to the living room, he found Lena standing near the window, her arms wrapped loosely around herself, her expression unreadable. She had heard nothing, but she had sensed everything. Ethan, she said quietly, I don't want to come between you and your family. You're not, he said firmly. But he doesn't approve, she whispered, her voice trembling in a way she hated. I could see it the moment he looked at me. He thinks I'm not right for you. He thinks I don't belong in your world. Ethan wheeled closer, his voice soft but unwavering. My brother doesn't decide my life. But what if he affects your business, your reputation, your investors? I don't want you to lose anything because of me. Then listen carefully, he replied, taking her hand. You are not a liability. You are not a risk. You are not a problem to manage. You are someone I care about deeply, and I will not let anyone, not even my family, make me give that up. Her breath shook as she tried to process his words. Ethan, I'm scared. I'm scared too, he admitted, but I'd rather face the fear with you than live safely without you. Lena's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of profound emotion. She leaned forward, resting her forehead gently against his. For a long moment, neither moved. They simply breathed together, finding comfort in the closeness. But yet, despite his reassurances, Lena felt the shadow of doubt settle deep within her heart. She didn't fear Ethan's love. She feared the world around him, the world that judged without mercy, the world that measured worth in status and wealth, the world she had never been part of. But she also knew something else. What she felt for Ethan was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Something real, something powerful, something worth fighting for. They stood in silence, the city lights casting a soft glow around them, unaware that the true test of their love was still to come, a test that would shake their foundations, challenge their strength, and reveal whether their bond was strong enough to withstand the storm waiting on the horizon.
The week following Preston's unwanted visit changed something between Ethan and Lena. Not between them emotionally, because their bond only grew stronger, but around them, in the world that seemed suddenly more intrusive, more watchful, more determined to test their connection. Ethan tried to ignore his brother's warning, yet it lingered in the quiet corners of his thoughts like a stubborn shadow. Meanwhile, Lena found herself battling insecurities she had kept buried for years, insecurities that whispered she wasn't enough for the world Ethan inhabited. They still spoke every night, still shared stories and laughter, still carried warmth toward each other that felt undeniably right. But beneath their conversations lay a tension neither wanted to acknowledge too soon, that love, no matter how powerful, would require courage neither of them had been asked to summon before. And the trial arrived sooner than expected. It happened on a Thursday morning, when Ethan arrived at Caldwell Dynamics headquarters, only to find the boardroom already buzzing with unusual energy.
Thomas Brennan, one of the lead investors, sat stiffly at the far end of the table, his expression unreadable. Lucas looked uneasy, tapping a pen nervously against the surface, while Preston, who rarely interfered directly in company matters, sat near the center with an expression that could only be described as grim preparation. Ethan entered the room with controlled composure, though a deep instinctive tension curled inside his stomach as he rolled toward his usual place at the head of the table. The moment he sat down, Thomas cleared his throat with a sharpness that indicated something serious, something premeditated. "Ethan," Thomas began, folding his hands together, "we've received feedback regarding your recent public appearances." Ethan remained silent, waiting for the real point to surface. "It seems your presence around the city with a certain individual has raised concerns, serious concerns, among major stakeholders, including the Westbrook Group." The mention of Westbrook made Ethan's jaw tighten. "They feel your personal choices could potentially compromise the company's image, especially during negotiations for international expansion. They believe your judgment is being clouded by an inappropriate relationship." Ethan's voice was calm but icy. "My relationship with Lena is not inappropriate." Thomas continued as if he hadn't heard him. "We are at a critical point, Ethan. If Westbrook pulls out, and they have threatened to, we risk losing millions in projected revenue. Several departments could suffer. Jobs could be impacted. We need stability, and that requires leadership decisions free from emotional distractions." Preston leaned forward, his expression tight but forcedly neutral. "Nobody is asking you to abandon your personal life completely. We're simply saying, be discreet, take a step back, reconsider the timing. You're putting too much at risk." Ethan felt his entire body flood with a restrained fury because this wasn't a business discussion anymore. It was judgment disguised as strategy, prejudice masked as practicality. He looked at each face around the table. People who praised him when he signed billion-dollar deals, people who applauded when he overcame adversity, people who claimed to admire his leadership. And yet the moment his private life did not fit their expectations, they turned on him without hesitation. In that moment, Ethan realized something profound. He had built a company that valued innovation and strength, yet the people running it valued conformity more than compassion. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low but steady. "Let me be very clear. My relationship does not diminish my ability to lead this company. What diminishes my ability," he continued, "is the belief that I need to align my personal life with outdated standards." Thomas stiffened and Preston's face paled. Ethan continued, "You all seem to forget this company exists because I built it. Every one of you is here because of the work I did, the ideas I created, the vision I executed. And if any of you think I will let prejudice dictate my life, then you have forgotten who I am." Thomas spoke again, but his voice held a bitter edge. "Then consider this your final warning, Ethan. Westbrook wants certainty, not complications. You'll have to choose your company or your romantic pursuit." Ethan stared at him, stunned by the audacity. "You believe Lena is a complication?" "I believe she jeopardizes everything we've built," Thomas replied coldly. Ethan inhaled, then exhaled slowly, controlling the storm inside him. His next words came not from anger, but from resolve. "Then let Westbrook pull out. I won't be manipulated by money, and I won't abandon someone who treated me with dignity when one of your polished elites humiliated me publicly." He turned his gaze toward Preston. "And I especially won't allow family to weaponize fear to keep me from happiness." After a stunned silence, Ethan added, "If any investor values bias over brilliance, then they don't belong in my company." He left the boardroom that day knowing he had ignited a firestorm, but he also knew he had chosen truth over comfort. Somewhere deep inside, he sensed this moment would shape his future more than any deal he had ever signed. Meanwhile, Lena was at the restaurant polishing glasses when one of her coworkers approached quietly. "Lena, there's someone waiting for you by the hostess stand." She wiped her hands and walked out, expecting a customer complaint or a delivery mix-up. Instead, she froze when she saw Preston Caldwell standing there. Sharp suit, sharp gaze, sharp intent. Her stomach dropped. "Mrs. Rivera," Preston said, addressing her formally, "may I speak with you privately?" She followed him outside to the quiet sidewalk, her heart pounding. Preston wasted no time. "You need to walk away from Ethan." The sentence hit her like a slap. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Preston said. "Ethan's world is complicated, demanding, ruthless. You don't belong in that environment, and you will get hurt in the crossfire. Or worse, you'll hurt him." Lena swallowed hard. "You don't know me." "I know you're a waitress," he said bluntly. "I know Ethan is vulnerable right now, and you've become his emotional crutch. I know he deserves someone who understands the pressures of his life, not someone who will make it harder." Lena felt her hands tremble, but she forced them still. "I care about him. I would never hurt him." "Intentions don't matter," Preston replied. "Reality does. And the reality is he is losing investors. He is losing partnerships, all because of how this looks." Her breath hitched. "Because of me." "Yes," Preston said unapologetically. "And if you truly care about Ethan, you will leave before things get worse." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back with every ounce of strength she had. Preston wasn't done. "You are pulling him into a world that limits him. You can't support him the way he needs. You can't open doors for him. You can't stand beside him at global events. You can't give him the life he deserves." Lena's voice cracked. "And you think I haven't considered that? You think I don't lie awake at night wondering if I'm good enough for him?" Preston softened slightly but stayed firm. "Then do the right thing. Walk away." He left her on the sidewalk with her heart breaking in her chest. That evening, Ethan arrived at Lena's apartment unexpectedly. When she opened the door, he saw the grief in her eyes instantly. "Lena," he whispered, "what's wrong?" She took a shaky breath. "Your brother came to see me." Ethan's face darkened. "What did he say?" "He told me I'm hurting your company, that investors are backing out, that your reputation is being questioned because of me." Her voice trembled. "He said if I care about you, I'll leave." Ethan felt a wave of rage, but beneath it was fear. Fear that she might believe Preston's words. "Lena," he said urgently, rolling closer, "don't listen to him. I don't care about the investors. I don't care about Westbrook. I only care about you." "But you could lose everything," she whispered, tears spilling freely now. "And I don't want to be the reason. I don't want to be your downfall." "You're not my downfall," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're the first good thing that has happened to me in years." But Lena stepped back, hugging her arms around herself. "I love you, Ethan," she said softly, painfully, "which is why I can't watch you lose your dream because of me." Ethan's heart clenched. "And I love you," he said desperately, "which is why I will never let you go." She shook her head, sobbing. "Love isn't enough when the world is stacked against us." Ethan reached out, taking her hand with a strength that defied every fear. "Then let's stack ourselves against the world." In that moment, something inside Lena broke, not in defeat, but in surrender. She threw her arms around him, burying her face against his shoulder as he held her tightly, refusing to let her slip away. He whispered against her hair, "I choose you. Over everything. Over everyone. I choose you." But the battle outside their embrace was still raging. The next morning, news broke on several business websites. Rumors about Ethan's controversial relationship, speculation about his leadership, headlines questioning whether he was emotionally compromised. It hurt Ethan, not because of the gossip, but because people couldn't fathom that love came in forms outside money, status, and power. Lena read the articles and felt physically ill, convinced she had ruined his life. But Ethan wasn't done fighting. He called a press conference, something he rarely did. The entire company gathered, employees whispering with uncertainty. Cameras were